Hey friends, it's your boy BigTCGFan coming at with another video, and today we're going to conclude our video series for the game Galactic Empires. Now unfortunately, normally I would do a gameplay for this series, but honestly this game was just too complex for my usual playing partners to grasp, so I'm just going to go over the game with you guys so we can share it. So the way this game works is you make a deck. Minimum is 40 cards, and then there's like per 25 certain rules that you have. And I just have a pile of cards here to show you guys the cards. You're required to have 5 copies of each card type at minimum, with a requirement of 8 different card types in the deck. So then you'll see what's going on there with that. So the way this gameplay works is each person will make their deck, and then they'll do this thing called a reserve. Actually, you announce by announcing who your major empire is. So for example, we have the Argonian sector headquarters. The goal of the game, you see the 25 up there, is to do 25 points of damage to your opponent's headquarters, right? And so you'll declare your empire. So for example, this is the Argonians. Then you'll do what's known as a reserve fleet. So what you'll do is you'll take 2 cards. Basically, you take one card for each player. So if there are 3 players, you'll take 3 cards. If it's one-on-one, you take two. So let's say we'll go planet and ship. And you got to keep in mind that the goal with the reserve is it's a card that you can just swap with another card in your hand at any point during the game, during your turn. So let's say you got your thing and you need a planet, you swap a planet, and then put whatever you had in your hand in place of that planet. So your options are, you could be confident in your deck building and you could just put like a super powerful cards in there. Like for example, I have this D10, which for every 25 cards, you're only allowed to have 1 of in the whole deck. So this is my Dragon King. I guess he's a really rare card that I pulled. So you could put that in your reserve along with a planet just to make sure. And then you roll with that. And then what you'll do is after you have your reserve cards, let's say we just put that dragon over there, and then we put a planet, right? And you have those in reserve. And then you will shuffle your decks. So we'll just do a quickie shuffle here so you guys can, get the idea. I'm raw shuffling them. It's not like these cards are worth anything. I literally bought a whole booster box for like $15. So, all right. And so the way the game works is they'll do an ante, but usually the games get rid of the ante. Is you shuffle the cards, set it in front of you, may shuffle your deck. Player left then cuts your deck. After all decks have been cut, each player at top draws his card and exposes it. This is called the ante card. Mine's a 5. Whoever has the highest number for the ante, they get to go first, right? And then there's an optional rule where the winner gets to keep it all. All right, instead of discarding it. Okay, so like I said, the object. So the way it works is after they've been done, reserve fleets are set. They have a turn sequence, and the way it works is a complete turn was when all players go through the turn sequence. I'm going to put it right up here for you. Boom. The turn sequence is point allocation phase, engagement phase, play cards phase A, weapons fire phase, play cards phase B, discard cards phase, and then draw cards. All right. So, and the way it works is and it's funny because like I'm reading these rules off of a website and it's honestly very confusing, but we'll go ahead and kind of go through it. Previous play points allocation phase records keeping step. Previously played cards whose duration have expired are discarded as the first action is phase. Psi functions whose durations have expired deactivate. Cards that have produce or modify point output generate their effect before being discarded. Example, periodic comet will produce its research on its last turn. All shield regenerate 1 point during this phase at no cost. 1 point damage is removed from the shields for each card with damage shields in the player's fleet. allocation. Terrain and some cards generate points. Let me show you that. See the 2 dots there? So this planet every turn generates 2 dot. So it's kind of like mana almost, because they have a wide variety of symbols. You can see some of them there. Let's see, I got a couple more. You get squares. You have all sorts of a star, 2 types of stars. You'll see them. If my camera will decide to focus on the cards and not the background. There we go. So yeah, so they got all these things and it generates them. Only card that will receive all of its point. Okay. Generated points are allocated to other cards. So basically what happens is you then allocate the points to other cards. And then you have your ship movement phase. And this is where you can have your ships change locations from one planet to another. You can skip that if you're a newbie player. Then you have your engagement phase. Cards that have their point requirements are considered engaged and are placed in a vertical position in this phase. Cards without points remain engaged. Cards that did not receive requirements are considered disengaged or are placed in a horizontal position. They cannot operate. For the sake of player convenience, engagement phase may be merged with allocation phase since it's easier. So basically you pay the points to basically pretty much untap the cards. Straightforward. All right, player phase A, then you are allowed to play up to 3 different cards during this phase. So all engaged players may play their actions once per turn. Action cards may occur once per turn or in the play cards phase B. Cards that cause card damage symbols on the top right only, may cause their damage only during this or player card phase B. Then you move on to weapon fire phase. Standard targets is following card types are considered standard targets: terrain, ships, dragons, size, bases, installations, free-flying shuttles, and any cards that are destroyed by damage. Fleet targeted weapons must fire at the beginning of the weapons phase before any weapon volleys are declared. These weapons affect all of a given type and targets. So they'll say what they target. They're not considered part of the weapons volley. The weapons volley, each weapons are considered 5 steps. You declare your target from any number of engaged cards in the player's fleet, with no more unfired weapons. So weapons volley. Players may play reaction cards in the reaction mode. A firing player cannot react unless another player has reacted. Resolve the effects of reaction cards. Resolve the effects of the weapons volley, i.e. target destroyed or damage. Repeat the above sequence, declaring weapon volleys for new targets until there are no more targets or there are no more weapons to fire. Players may declare only one weapons volley against one target for each phase. Then you move on to play cards phase B. Player may only play 3 cards during his turn. So you can play 3 in either combined turn. So you can't play 3 here and then 3 in the other phase. It's pretty straightforward. And then it's the same exact thing as A. Discard phase. Remaining unused cards may be discarded from your hand. You can discard any number of cards from your active fleet. Cards that are yours but under the control of an opponent cannot be discarded. And then you draw back up to 9 cards. Oh, it says if it has 9 or fewer, you draw 2 cards. If you have 10 or 11 cards, you may draw 1 card. If you have 12 or more cards, you draw 0 cards. If there are no more cards and the player can't draw cards, the discard pile is not reshuffled. Player who's completed his turn advises the next player that he's finished. Beginner's note: Galactic Empires is a step-by-step game. If you do something, if you skip something that you wanted to do, and you skip the phase, you can't go back. All right. And I found this great website. I'll put the link in the description that really goes over all this. Then they got a narrative that goes through a turn. Bob and Sue's actions are done. So here we go. Bob and Sue are playing a standard game. Each has a deck of cards that is shuffled, cut, and the ante is drawn. All right. Susan had a higher ante. She goes first. Sue plays a Type 3, which is basically a Terrain 3, which is the level, Asteroid Belt. She has no other terrains to play. She has 8 cards in her hand, so she draws 2 cards from her deck. Bob plays a Type 3 small planet. He also has no other terrain in his hand, so he has 8 cards, so he draws 2 cards, ending his first complete turn. See, and the reason they do that on their first turn is because they don't have any terrain to generate points, and they have nothing in play. Then it starts to get in there. So she plays her Type 1 Moon, then she plays a disengaged S1 Freighter on her Type 3 Asteroid Belt. She draws 2 cards, ending her turn. Bob plays a disengaged Base 4 on his Type 4 planet, small planet, and an M1 small phaser eel on Sue's S1 Freighter. Sue plays a reaction C4 Science Officer into her Science Freighter to react to Bob's phaser eel. Bob's turn ends and he draws 2 cards. Sue now allocates her terrain points. The freighter, so you see how this works is you can't really do much for the first few turns until you build up a little bit something to go on. So that's how a lot of how the game works. And you can see even the ships they generate, because this is the cost and that's the generation right there. And you'll note like these are used to play characters, but these are what you get off of planets or terrain, I guess you call them. Yeah, so it's pretty straightforward in that sense. It's so convoluted that unfortunately Junie and Midnight's Adventure couldn't figure it out. Then what they'll do, now that she's able to allocate her terrain points, the freighter requires only 1 supply and 1 energy point. Her 2 terrain cards remain. Here you go. I'm going to show you this. There. So you can see that right there. And then what I'll do is I'll put on a little map right here that shows you the play area, just so you can see how it lays out. Her terrain cards provide easily, so she engages the freighter by turning the freighter upright. So basically what comes into play like this, and then when you can engage it, i.e. pay the points for it, it goes like this, right? The freighter has 2 phasers plus 1 from the refit for a total of 3. Phaser eel does not block these because the science officer suspends the hostile effects of the monsters. Bob places a die in front of himself with 3 showing the number of damage to his sector HQ. So what happens is because he has no ships in play, he can't defend his sector HQ, and then the eel has been nullified, so it can't. She can skip attacking it and go right to his HQ. She now plays her last card, an H2 Ion Storm on Bob's base. He places a die in the upper right corner near the shields with 2 showing represent the damage to the base's shield. She draws 2 cards. So there you go. And the way that works is it just bounces between player going back and forth with the different cards. So the game itself is not insanely complex, but it's complex enough that an 11 and a 10-year-old couldn't figure it out. And I tried with them a little bit. It just wasn't happening. So we just I decided, you know what, I'll just come over here and share with you guys how this game works. And I mean, I think this game would be a lot of fun to play. I am going to definitely be building a deck and sharing it with you guys pretty soon. So what'll happen is then hopefully I'll run into someone who plays some of these games and we'll throw down. So this concludes my video. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment down below, share if you can. Peace out.